From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Quatermass and the Pit, released in 1967. This movie is also known as 5 Million Years to Earth. It stars James Donald, Andrew Keir, and Barbara Shelley, directed by Roy Ward Baker. The synopsis is, a rocket scientist, Professor Bernard Quatermass, discovers that an ancient race of aliens may be influencing humanity's destruction. The story. Unbeknownst to those outside of the United Kingdom, there was a franchise of 3 BBC television series and movies that were centered around the character Professor Bernard Quatermass of the British Experimental Rocket Group and his chronicles of saving the Earth from various attacks from aliens. Behind Sherlock Holmes and the Doctor, Quatermass was one of Britain's most legendary intellectual fictional characters. BBC News Online proclaimed him as Britain's first television hero. He was created by Nigel Kneale for BBC Television in 1953 when he was assigned to create a 6-part serial. He chose the protagonist's first name, Bernard, in honor of astronomer Bernard Lovell, founder of the Jordell Bank Observatory. Originally, his last name was going to be Charlton, but Kneale decided that he wanted something a little bit more unique and something that would stand out to an audience. He went looking in the London phone book directory and picked it. The first series was The Quatermass Experiment in 1953, starring Reginald Tate in the titular role for 6 television episodes. It was about a surviving astronaut from a mission on one of Quatermass's rockets who slowly began to be absorbed by a plant-like alien that would eventually release its spores and destroy the Earth. Of course, Quatermass was there to save the day. Since that went over well, the BBC decided to create a sequel to the first series, Quatermass 2, released in 1955, with John Robinson playing Quatermass. This was also another 6-episode installment. This time, hundreds of mind-controlling, gas-filled meteorites land in a specific area, taking over citizens and government officials. Quatermass, after being turned down for his moon-based designs, find that his idea has been repurposed by the aliens, starting their own colony on Earth. Quatermass and his allies defeat the aliens before the impending invasion. The idea struck the creators to create a film remaking the first series, and that was when The Quatermass Experiment was released in 1955, starring Brian Dunleavy as the professor, produced by Hammer Film Productions. If you've never heard of this movie or any of the Quatermass films, it's because it was determined that no one outside of the UK would understand or be familiar with Quatermass, so it was named The Creeping Unknown. Since the formula of producing a film from a TV series works so well for the Quatermass Experiment, the film Quatermass 2 was released in 1957 by Hammer Film Productions, acting as a remake of the 1955 series of the same title. It also starred Brian Dunleavy and also went by an alternative title, Enemy from Space. It was the first movie to boast the number 2 in the title. It was now time for a third 6-episode television series, Quatermass and the Pit, which aired from 1958 to 1959. It's also referred to as Quatermass 3 among the fans. This time, the part of the professor was played by Andre Morel. As with the other 2 series, Quatermass and the Pit was next to be turned into a film. However, it was not as easy this time around. Nigel Kneale completed the script in 1961, and director Val Guest and actor Brian Dunleavy from the first 2 films were slated to return for a release in 1963. This would have been great to continue the connections throughout the three movies. However, sometime in 1957, Hammer Films collaborated with Columbia Pictures to help with distribution and funding. Unfortunately, Columbia was not interested in the film due to their unfamiliarity with the franchise when it was pitched, and the project was shelved for a long time. In 1966, Hammer fell out with Columbia and got into a new deal with Seven Arts, ABPC, and 20th Century Fox, who then greenlit the film immediately. Val Guest and Brian Donlevy were too busy with other projects then to work on a third film. Hammer then got one of their frequent directors, Roy Ward Baker, to step in to take charge, and actor Andrew Keir was chosen to play the titular role. Baker was best known for directing A Night to Remember, released in 1958, which won a Golden Globe for Best English Language Foreign Film in 1959. This is a film that many of my subscribers here have suggested, and I hope that I'll be able to review one day. I'm going to cross my fingers. I've heard nothing but amazing things about that movie. Roy Ward Baker felt his background on that movie and on the movie The One That Got Away in 1957 gave him the experience that he needed to bring Quatermass and the Pit to life. He thought that Nigel Neal's screenplay was so good that all he had to do was cast it and shoot it. As well, he enjoyed the fact that Hammer Studio was small and made a lot of the decision-making process very fast and simple. The story for Quatermass and the Pit is very similar to the television series, which I described in the synopsis. One stark difference is that the film was less complicated but had much more of a cinematic punch for the short time we had with it on screen. This is a brilliant intellectual story that just keeps ramping up until we get a knockdown, drag-out massacre by the end of the film. And I can't tell you how much I loved the story. It's amazing, and we'll get into the details as the review continues. Now, the pacing at 1 hour and 37 minutes, one thing I love about older movies is that they are typically short and sweet. A lot of heavy stuff happens in such a short time, and it really takes multiple views to catch all of it. These guys were telling a story that was originally much longer in the series, with enough time to let the content breathe a little. This movie doesn't. You go from one thing to the next, so you've got to drink a cup of joe. If you don't know what that is, it's a cup of coffee. Get a pad and a pen to take notes. And you may even have to pause the film and Google a couple of things from time to time. It's that intense. Now, the challenge. The challenge in the story are the aliens that are slowly revealed to us in about 25 minutes into the film. Let me explain how it happens. While extending the train line at Hobbs End Station on Hobbs Lane, workers discover a fossilized skull that attracts the attention of archaeologists Dr. Roney and his assistant Barbara Judd. In total, they dig up about 6 skeletons that are more than 5 million years old. So we go back to over 5 million years ago. These hideous locust-looking insectoid aliens from Mars realized that their planet was slowly dying, and so they planned to colonize Earth, but there was a snag in the plan. They could not physically live on Earth for whatever reasons, but they planned that they could live on through humanity. They came to planet Earth and took the primitive people that were there from all over the globe to their home world to perform experiments. Of all of the many expeditions, this particular one got buried in this pit and was preserved for 5 million years. The successful expeditions released prehistoric subjects on Earth, thus influencing man's evolution and the development of human intelligence. These prehistoric men passed on their genes to most of the population. Within these humans are the memories of Martian life, which mainly consisted of massive wars to cleanse their hives. These memories are difficult for humans to withstand, and they are deeply embedded into the psyche. The aliens have devised a way that the memories can only be released with a trigger. As well, some of the aliens can appear to humans and have been perceived as horrifying apparitions or demons that thrive off of human energy. Sometimes individuals can become possessed, exhibit psychic abilities, and telekinesis. So the film associates the aliens with the history of paganism, religion, the devil, demons, goblins, and gargoyles. I love this because if you think about it for too long, it may give you the creeps, especially when the film tells you that this nearly deserted street that all of this takes place on, Hobbs Lane, was originally Hobbs Lane, spelled with one B, which is actually translated to the Devil's Lane. Very creepy. As the alien spacecraft is revealed in the pit, more strange happenings occur until finally we get a large crowd of people gathered around the vehicle, and it comes alive. Yes, the alien spacecraft is a living organism that feeds off of human energy, and the more people that interact with it, the stronger it gets. Once powerful enough, it creates a psychic trigger for those who are in the area that have descended from the prehistoric men, the aliens implanted on Earth so long ago. Now, this trigger turns the descendants into mindless killing drones with the memories and instincts of the insectoid Martians. Those who were not born with the prehistoric gene became the targets of extermination. This is also very terrifying and reminds me so much of the movie Life Force, which I love so much and I reviewed here on this channel, wherein the aliens were also connected to a lore. That time it was about vampires and tales of vampires throughout history. There's also an eerie similarity to the utter pandemonium that occurs at the end of the film, where Londoners are killing each other. It was theorized that this violent part of the storyline was actually inspired by the real-life horrific events of a series of racially motivated riots that took place in Notting Hill, England, between August and September in 1958. Mobs of massive numbers of people were attacking the houses of West Indian families. That is so horrifying. Just imagine being in your home and there's an angry mob of people at your door for some random reason you have no control over. This is where I give so much credit to the writing here, because it was cleverly used to connect the idea that real life can be applied to the story that is being told. Clearly, Nigel Neal wanted the audience to have a conversation about this, or at least consider moments in history where humans chose violence in the name of race, religion, tribe, or country. The story has an additional challenge in the film in the character of Colonel Breen, who is in opposition with Quatermass. Breen thinks that Quatermass is holding on to the novelty of his ideas, but not willing to use them for military supremacy in protection of the nation. However, Quatermass says that Breen is totally out of touch with his humanity and not respecting the responsibility of the consequences of using science in the way he plans to. It's a compelling argument, and the beautiful part about their disputes is that his views really doesn't make him a bad guy. And I think that's fascinating. He has his views, and And some people will agree with it, and some people would vastly disagree with it. Breen is added to the alien story when the diggers find something that appears to be a pipe. After digging more, they discover the tip of a massive object that they believe may be what is called a Satan bomb, which is referring to the SC 1800 Satan, which was one of the largest bombs used in World War II by the Germans. Also, since we're talking about the devil and demons associated with the aliens, this reference to Satan is very, very much connected to the story. And I love that. The connection of those details. Colonel Breen is called to take a look at things because he is an ex-bomb specialist, and Professor Quatermass happens to just tag along. After assessing the situation and seeing all of the strange things in the pit, including the very unique and obvious spacecraft, Breen concludes that the whole thing is a propaganda relic from the Germans as a result of them knowing that they were losing the war. He is so unwilling to believe that there's more to it, and all of the strange events and things found were all manufactured according to his expertise. He conducts a gathering of the press to the ship, arrogantly trying to prove his theory that this is of no danger to anyone. And in the process, he accidentally aids the alien spirits to attack London. Every good sci-fi mystery needs a Colonel Breen. Even though the character is a cliche, he is most enjoyable and formidable of a challenge because he is always looking for the practical answer, which is in direct contrast to our protagonist, who accurately surmised the impossible. In my opinion, the challenges in this film were excellent. Now, the empathy. The empathy takes a while to build up as the film takes its time to set up the plot. There's a lot happening, so you don't get to know the characters very much. However, if you're very familiar with Professor Quatermass and his other media productions, you're already predisposed to empathy because you're aware that he has been through so much with the aliens in his past, and he knows things about them that most people wouldn't connect. But for first-time viewers of anything to do with Quatermass, this is a bit tougher. What we do get, especially in the beginning, is that he has some moral high ground because he doesn't want his work being used for something like war. Up until then, it was a little uncertain who the main character was because the film unfolds the mystery of the aliens as if we were one of the characters in the film, learning things as we go along. And I really like that kind of storytelling because I want to be immersed in the story. I want to make friends with the characters and struggle with them, as I felt I actually got to do this with this film, and it was really a wonderful treat. Back to Quatermass, he's a very straightforward character in the film. He is serious and all about his work. There's a lot of pretty incredibly wacky set of events happening throughout the film. So his dedication to being serious was a heavy dose of credibility for me. That was like the cherry on top because he is our rock in all of this. He delivers a lot of exposition, but again, he knows a lot about the aliens because he has battled them before. There are two other heroes in the film, Dr. Roney and Barbara Judd, who round out the empathy. Barbara Judd is actually a pretty incredible character, digging up Hobbs Lane news articles of supernatural events and tying them to the pit. Even Quatermass didn't think that her contributions were important until she insisted that he consider it. She has a wonderful sense of excitement for her work and solving this mystery. Again, credibility was the anchor here, and I think that's why I enjoyed this character so much. She actually cares about her work and sticks to Quatermass like glue because she wants the answers. I also love the fact that she was a character that had no stereotypes. You could change her gender or her race and nothing would fundamentally change about the story. She's a beautiful woman and there's some incredible chemistry going on. It's very easy to imagine them in a romantic way, but it's not explored in the film, which I liked a lot. And I think this is due to Quatermass's intensity. His character would not engage in such nonsense as romance while there was a threat to humanity. And I wish more films had taken that kind of a serious tone, especially when it comes to life and death situations. I really appreciated the focus that these characters have. And I believed their situation and I rooted for them. Their working relationship is very comfortable as a team, splendidly combining their efforts to uncover what's going on. That was so well done, as each one gets a chance to shine and their own to affect the story. Dr. Roney is an important character that seems like a side character in the beginning. He is very instrumental in telling us about the skeletons that were found, but he then fades into the background by the middle of the film. Later, when the aliens activate all of the humans with their psychic trigger to cleanse the hive, he pops up to save Quatermass from being swept up in the massacre. He comes up with the idea to use iron to kill the mega alien spirit that emerges in the end. He devises a way to do it with a crane, and he sacrifices his life to save London, and perhaps even the world. My only criticism about the character is that I would have loved it if he had been more prominent throughout the film. He is a courageous and sophisticated character that really captivated some of the best scenes in the film. More Dr. Roney, please. Now for the technical aspects. The production had 3 months of filming at MGM Borehamwood Studio instead of Hammer Studios because they were all booked up. The set design was, in my opinion, excellently done. It gave the film a great deal of authenticity. The streets of the lot were used for the destruction of Hobbs Lane. It really surprised me how good it looked, giving the scenes a feel of massive destruction. And spliced in were some really awesome miniatures. And guys, you know how much I love miniatures. And it really was kind of cool seeing the detailing of London's destruction even further. The ideas for the alien design were pretty good. You know, it's a basic look of like an insectoid kind of thing, but I think the quality of the props were definitely a product of its time. For 1967, it was pretty good and extremely creative. The first visual of the aliens on their ship with that crystalline quadrant kind of look was very unique, and it was a bold visual for its time. I loved it absolutely. During the film, the ship actually triggers Barbara Judd's ancient gene memories, in which Quatermass and Dr. Roney hook her up to a machine to record them. These visual scenes of Martian memories was of an army of insectoid aliens carrying out a raid on a competing hive on Mars. I love this kind of stuff, and I thought it was really brave for the filmmakers to attempt to visually tell this part of the story. I am so sure that many small kids seeing this movie in the 1960s and early 70s might have been totally freaked out by this, and it speaks so much more of how innocent times were back then. I just think this is great. I also love the fact that it was cloaked by glitches and video static, giving it kind of a freaky realism. Again, so clever and so very creative. This was so well done, in my opinion, for the time period, the limitations that they had as far as being able to create like anything they wanted. They had to do what was possible. And we can really thank special effects supervisor Les Bowie for this scene, using a combination of puppets and actual live locusts for this. I also enjoyed a lot of the low-tech effects, like the giant spirit alien at the end of the film looming over the buildings. It was so simple, and the audience understood what was happening. It's a wild and freaky moment in the film, but it reads accurately. Yes, there's a spirit of an alien energy or some kind of thing looming over the city, and it's controlling the chaos. Tristram Cary provided the unique score for Quatermass in the Pit, using a mixture of orchestral melodies and electronic music that was about 30 minutes in total. There was actually a lot of silence for most of the film in the background, with a few moments of this really disturbing and intense electronic music. Cary became very interested in electronic music while he was serving in the Royal Navy as an electronics expert working on radar. The music was really reminiscent of the electronic tonalities used in the movie Forbidden Planet in 1956, in the way that it has a very abstract and alarming sound to it, very much like nails on a chalkboard. There were moments where the mood could be described as anxious, unyielding, and agitated. Many critics that I've heard talk about this film mention how unpleasant it is, but I actually enjoyed it, knowing exactly what kind of tone it was building. Now the performances. Hammer regular and Scottish actor Andrew Keir was chosen to carry the film, playing Quatermass. Andrew was incredible in the role, centering the events with credibility. And I've used that word a lot. This film has credibility, and Andrew really is the center of it. He really made me a fan of Quatermass, and I was actually really curious about his character and other iterations of it. Notwithstanding getting along very well with the crew during the entire shoot, Andrew was under the belief that the director wanted a different actor for the role, and it ruined his experience on the project. Ever the professional, no one knew about this on set, so we don't really even get to see this on screen. When asked about this, Roy Ward Baker said that he had no idea of this and endlessly praised Andrew's performance. Nevertheless, he was outstanding as a result. This is Nigel Neal's favorite Quatermass film because of Andrew's performance. Andrew went on to reprise the role of Quatermass for BBC Radio 3 in the Quatermass Memoirs in 1996. Barbara Shelley gave an incredible performance as Barbara Judd. Wow, she's fantastic, giving Judd an endearing professional intensity. She gave Judd a heart of kindness, and you can see it in the way that she kind of nurtures the other characters. She also had to play a wide array of emotions of being horrified by the alien visions and then later being a drone under their control. Not to mention how physical she was in the film to perform much of the action. Her character at one point had to be punched in the face by Quatermass, and I'm really hoping that that was faked. Now, I'm not surprised to learn that Shelley appeared in many Hammer films in the 1950s and 60s, with this being her very last film with the studio. Julian Glover plays Colonel Breen. We may be more familiar with seeing him in movies like Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, released in 1980, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in 1989. But of all the roles I mentioned, he really is able to flesh out his character a little bit more here. One of my favorite scenes he's in is during the first encounter with Quatermass, where they're pretty much bantering back and forth. As a peace offering, Breen smiles and invites Quatermass to dinner. And I was really impressed with how Julian delivered that line and how he was able to shift the mood in just seconds. What a great performance with so much nuance. Enjoyment! The television series ends with Quatermass giving Earthlings a warning. However, this film ends with a very bizarre image of Quatermass and Judd silently stunned by the events that have just transpired as the credits roll. The two of them barely want to make eye contact as the city is in ruins and splayed about them. It's just this incredibly tragic and awkward moment, but also so appropriate for what they just endured. Quatermass in the Pit premiered on November 9th in 1967. The film had good reviews when it opened and still to this day gets good reviews by modern reviewers, which is really rare. Most people generally seem to like it. The film was a success for Hammer, and the Quatermass legacy continued on with Quatermass, released in 1979 in a 4-part TV series, and the Quatermass Conclusion in 1979 movie version of that TV series. Out of new ideas, there was a remake of the 1953 TV series, The Quatermass Experiment, in 2005. The series has also been responsible for inspiring many creatives such as the writer Stephen King, director Tobe Hooper, and director John Carpenter. I really wouldn't even be reviewing this movie because I didn't even know it existed. I have one of my awesome Patreon supporters and YouTube subscribers, Peter, to thank for introducing me to this. He was the first person to suggest it to me, so thank you, Peter, so very much. And then a few subscribers mentioned it to me, like Luke and Traspondo Pons. Thank you so much, and I'm really enlightened, and I enjoyed the journey of learning about Quatermass and this, this legacy that he has. Being an American, I have never heard of Quatermass, and this fascinates me that there are so many movies and properties out there that I have yet to learn about. And I'm really gratified that this whole experience of starting this YouTube channel has been sort of a learning process for me as far as learning more about movies. I thought I knew a lot about movies, but I'm learning even more. So Quatermass in particular really impresses me because this character is actually a lot like Indiana Jones. I can totally see a juiced up modern day version of him fighting aliens in a more modern film as a combination of like James Bond and Neil deGrasse Tyson globetrotting around the world with his invented gadgets saving the world. I don't know. I'm not big into remakes, but given without technology today and maybe some really good writing, maybe this has a chance of being a really interesting series or franchise. Who would you pick to, be the new Quatermass? I mean, I'm thinking like Ian McGregor or even Idris Elba. What do you think? Leave a comment down below and tell me who you think would be a great Quatermass for our time. In this film, what's really striking about Quatermass is his sincerity and passion for his work. I am astounded by his knowledge and his theories about aliens he encounters. When I saw this for the first time, it was so satisfying to see a psychological sci-fi thriller that was so efficient and had such a wide scope. I was really in love immediately because of the implications of the storyline that was specifically diving into real-life historical references. That really opens up so much more behind the story than what you actually see in the film. The aliens here, though, are the real star of the film, terrorizing these poor people with their excellent 5 million year master plan to take over the planet. I love it. I mean, talk about thorough. Their life on Mars and culture of war is also another avenue of depth that the film only touches upon, leaving so much more to the imagination. The way that the story is written, the audience is taken for a wild ride of events and legitimately creepy concepts that are likely to keep you up all night, being freaked out by every strange sound or flicker of light. Yes, it's powerful in that way without using jump scares. It's the kind of gradual scare that the mind begins to think of and race with thoughts in a very dark room. It's a real retro treat for me. My rating is an 8.9. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it, and if you did, I've got over 100 of these videos, so go on and browse the channel and see more reviews from me like this. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the bell icon to be the very first to be notified of my next video. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.